All right, my friends, welcome into episode 295 of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. Leaders eat last. You've probably heard that phrase. Maybe you've read the book. Maybe you've even built part of your leadership philosophy around that very idea. Take care of your people. Put the team first and serve others. And I believe deeply in servant leadership for absolute clarity. But here's a question that we don't ask nearly enough. What happens when the leader keeps eating last? And eventually, there's nothing left. What happens when serving everyone else turns into ignoring your own capacity, your own stress, and your own needs? Because leadership doesn't somehow make us less human. And yet, we often create this strange expectation that the leader should support everyone else's mental health, manage everyone else's emotions, remain calm through every crisis, make every difficult decision, and yet somehow never need support for ourselves. Now, my guest today wants to challenge that narrative. Melissa Doman is an organizational psychologist, a former therapist, an author, and someone who works with leaders and organizations around the world on mental health, communication, emotional intelligence, and team dynamics. Now, this conversation gets incredibly practical. We're going to talk about why leaders need permission to be human. We're going to dig into something that Melissa calls communicating capacity, and essentially how simply telling your team where you are can completely change the way they experience you. We're going to talk about the difference between the things that truly require your attention and those manufactured emergencies that consume way too much of it. And honestly, we're going to ask a bigger question. If our organizations are really serious about supporting employee well-being, who's supporting the leaders? This is a really good conversation, my friends, and I know you are absolutely going to love this. And somehow in this conversation, we even managed to work in an inflatable velociraptor and a Chewbacca impression. Yeah, both of those firsts here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast, and you'll definitely have to stick around to the end for the Chewbacca impression. But first, a quick word from our friends at Hey Tutor. This episode of the Leaning Into Leadership podcast is brought to you by Hey Tutor. School leaders, as your year gets underway, you already know the challenge. Every student walks through the doors with different needs, different strengths, and honestly, sometimes very different gaps in their learning. Your teachers cannot do all of that work alone. And here's why Hey Tutor is so great and can help you with that specific need. Hey Tutor partners with schools and districts to provide high-impact tutoring designed to give students the additional support they need in literacy, math, and other critical academic areas. And this isn't about adding another thing to your teachers' plates. It's about creating additional capacity around them so students can get the targeted support they need while your teachers stay focused on the incredible work happening in their classrooms every single day. Hey Tutor is recognized with the National Student Support Accelerators Tutoring Program Design Badge, reflecting their commitment to research-based high-impact tutoring practices. So if you're looking for another way to support students, strengthen learning, and create additional capacity for your teachers this school year, check out my friends at Hey Tutor. Go to heytutor.com or hit the link down in the show notes. That'll let them know you heard about them here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. And now let's lean into this conversation. Let's lean into leadership with Melissa. All right, my friends, welcome back into the show. My guest today, Melissa Doman. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast.
I am so happy we're finally doing this. It was quite the road to get here, wasn't it?
Yes, it absolutely has been. So full disclosure, folks, Melissa and I met I don't know, February or March, something like that.
Yeah.
And we have kicked the can on recording this episode probably 4 or 5 times. So really glad you and I finally get a chance to connect. And interestingly,
100%.
I mean, we probably live like 30 miles apart. You know, we probably could have done this in person, but that's okay.
For sure.
So
next time.
Yeah. So Melissa, let's do this. Let's maybe orient our leaders that are listening to the show into who Melissa is. Give them a little bit of background.
Well, I like long walks on the beach and coffee. No, I'm just playing. No, I love coffee. Coffee is life.
Yes,
So
it
I
is.
am an organizational psychologist, a former therapist and author, and I teach companies, leaders, and employees the skill set and conversational literacy to talk about mental health, communication, and team dynamics at work. So my clients range from really large organizations like Google, Progressive, Estee Lauder, Dow Jones, to mid-sized companies like the Orlando City Soccer Club, the MLS team, to small companies and everything in between all around the planet. And I love doing this work because I am just so sick of people saying that, oh, these skills are important, these topics are important. And I go, what the hell are people supposed to do with that if you don't actually show them how to do it, the education, the skills, and really look at it as core professional development as opposed to a nice to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do a pretty awesome Chewbacca impression. I
And that
do.
one, I have a feeling you're not kidding. That's
No, I'm
there you
not.
go.
When I do
Yeah.
workshops in companies or whatever it is, I kind of dangle it like a carrot at the end of the session. I go, if you're a good class, if you interact with each other, if you interact with me, and you don't make me pull information out of you, I'm not above cheap tricks, and this will be your reward at the end of the session. And then you see all these adults look like children, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, yes. And I was like, awesome. They'll be well behaved, and even if just for this, and I'll sneak.
There you go. Yeah. So there's your teaser, folks. If you are good and you listen to the end of the episode, maybe Melissa will drop a little Chewbacca for us. So I think that is fantastic. And I did not have Chewbacca on my bingo card for this particular episode. So I think it's a pretty cool addition to this. So
Thanks.
So let's talk about this. You mentioned former therapist. Now you're doing a lot of that core professional development, really
Yeah.
leaning into, of course, you're an author. You've written 2 books. I know we'll talk about it later. The new book, Cornered Office, your first book. Yes, you can talk about mental health at work being re-released in September, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So let's kind of lean into some of those things and what you said in your introduction, that how we bring those skills forward, how we make them a core part of not only professional development, but how we lead is really, truly important. So maybe start us down the path of how do we go from, oh, that's kind of a nice thing, to,
Yeah.
this is part of our organization.
You know, it's funny. I was doing a client workshop yesterday, and we were talking about some pretty tough scenarios that they had been dealing with. And the workshop was about emotional intelligence, intentional communication, constructive conflict. And I love talking about those topics. And yes, all those things impact mental health at work, but they're also, individually very important. And so I was talking with this group of leaders, and they were saying, we have the policies, we have the procedures, like we know what to do, and it wasn't followed. And I said, well, did the person communicating this, do you think they said it in a helpful way or in the right way? Well, they're a leader. They should know how. I said, my question remains. Did they have the training or the understanding of how to communicate clearly and any of that, wrapping the information in the delivery, and they were silent? And I said, I understand that you have policies and procedures and yada, 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 but if you don't teach people these core skills as part of professional development, especially as leadership development, the execution will fail. So, and it was quite a while ago, a number of years ago, where they were saying that even emotional intelligence, for example, part of which, being aware of and managing mental health as a leader is a form of emotional intelligence, where they said a number of years ago, by 2025, emotional intelligence would be the number 1 rated skill in the workplace. It is now 2026. So I think we have a narrative issue around these topics where folks are still seeing this as like optional nice to haves. And I go, well, the last time I checked, it is human beings working with each other. We're not even going to go into AI right now.
Right.
And they need to learn how to communicate with each other and be able to be transparent. And, I could give 18 other examples. So help me understand how you're supposed to achieve anything without doing that functionally. I don't understand. And so when I put it like that, people go, well, when you put it like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it's core professional development.
Yeah. Well, but I think, what you're saying there, and this actually ties in a lot with the research I'm doing on my leadership teams book,
Hmm.
the paradigm of leadership,
Hmm.
that core leader at the top of the org chart
Hmm.
has evolved so much in, let's
Oh,
say,
yeah.
the last 10 to 15 years. No
Hmm.
longer is it I am the purveyor of knowledge. I am the person who, does everything.
Hmm.
Now we're much more in a leadership era where you will only go as far as the team that you have around you. And you
Hmm.
cannot take your team anywhere without the skills that you are talking about. And
Hmm.
I think it takes me to a question that I wanted to ask that really
Hmm.
connects to your book, Cornered Office. One of the things that you talk about in the book, and that I cannot wait to pull your string and let you go on this one, is pushing back on the narrative that leaders eat last, because I think it ties in exactly with what we're talking about. So no, we're not here to run over Simon Sinek, not in any way, shape, or form.
No,
But
no.
let's talk a little bit about that paradigm shift.
When I think about that sort of model, servant leadership, things like that, I truly believe, and again, I'm not here to like railroad any of these folks who created really, really helpful education. I think that in theory, it makes total sense. Absolutely. In execution is where we have some issues. So in the book, there's a chapter about the leadership mental health archetypes, and I had a lot of fun creating those. There's 7 of them. And the way I tend to look at it is when I think about servant leadership or leaders eat last, and I go, help me understand how that's sustainable if the leader is not allowed to be humanized, if they're not allowed to talk about their needs to be able to show up that way, if they're not encouraged to manage their own emotional and cognitive functioning as part of sustainable leadership. Help me understand how they can be a servant leader. Help me understand how they can survive to eat last if they are dehumanized in their role, if they are criticized for speaking up, asking for help, which is an emotionally intelligent thing to do. How does that work? Help me understand. It doesn't, is the answer. So
Correct.
I
Yeah.
think that I'm not saying you have to pick one or the other. I'm saying they have to coexist at the same time. You want to be a servant leader? Great. I think that's fantastic. You want to do the leader seat last? Fine. But it has to exist alongside the narrative that sustainable leadership is built on emotional and cognitive management as a leader. I literally, logically do not understand how one can exist without the other.
Well, and I would tell you that I was a walking example of that my first 2 years as a high school principal, where I wanted to do everything for everyone
Yeah.
to my own detriment, gaining
How'd that
40
how'd that work out
pounds.
for you?
Terrible. It was awful, right?
Yeah.
Fortunately, year 3, I got a leadership coach and started to learn exactly, what you're
Yeah.
talking about, that
Yeah.
and to the point where I've even created my own definition of servant leadership. It's not about
That's great.
doing everything for everyone else. It's
Yeah.
empowering others to do for themselves. That's
Mhm.
really what being a servant leader is.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. They cannot work and coexist, because the leader themselves will essentially ooze themselves up to a point where they can't survive. And that's not just the mental health, it's the physical health. It's
Well, yeah, the
you know,
cognitive functioning, decision
yeah,
making is everything.
yeah.
I'm actually doing some coaching for a leader right now who did servant leadership to their detriment. And it has made some interesting leadership team dynamics. And I basically came in and was like, it's kind of good that things exploded because they can't continue this way. And so you know, it's really easy to fall in love with an idea. But then when you think about the practicalities of implementing it, it's not so rosy. And so I do think that those things need to coexist. I mean, I'm a business owner myself. I have a team. Unfortunately for me, I practice what I preach. And so, I show up for them, like I do what I need to do, but I'm also very clear when my bandwidth has reached its end and when I cannot do, what I need for myself, let alone for them. And that we've created a culture in my team of, she's doing that to reorient herself and to let us know so that any shifts in her behaviors or actions have nothing to do with us, because we can't hold other people hostage by not letting them know where we are, them not letting us know where they are. And it happens all the time, especially in leadership. And we wonder in some cases, because some leaders are just assholes and they do bad things, but then there's other ones where they start acting out, and rarely, if ever, do I see that the first reaction is curiosity. It's not the first reaction. When a leader's acting out, the typical reactions from team members are anger, fear, whatever it is, because someone in a position of power is acting in a way they don't understand. And so the typical reaction is not curiosity, it's self-protection. Right. And whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I need to write something that talks about the quiet parts out loud, because this, and I'm clearly not making a mistake, an excuse for bad behavior in leadership. Absolutely not. When you're in a position of leadership, you have a responsibility not to let your burnout roll downhill. Much
Very
easier
true.
said than done. But there has to be more curiosity. I'm sorry?
No, please finish that thought. Then I've got a question about that.
Yeah, there has to be more curiosity about these behaviors in leadership and what is the source, because they're not all bad. Some of them really are 100%. Some of them are soulless. Like, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. But then there's other ones where we go, I wonder how they became that way. What is the culture? What is the messaging that they're getting? What are the beliefs they hold outside of the workplace about how they're supposed to act? What led them to this point? There's always a reason. And so I think that exploring the lack of permission to talk about managing emotional and cognitive health needs in leadership, I think that's part of the problem. And what makes it even worse is these days, when they're supposed to support the mental health of their teams and they're supposed to act like they're a different species, and that support structure should not be bidirectional between chronologically aged adults.
Absolutely. And you just absolutely hit it on the head. And I'm glad you finished what you were saying before I asked my question, because you kind of already went there. So this will be the perfect segue to this. I think about the team. I work with so many teams. Yeah. And yes, there is always kind of that org chart or that hierarchy or whatever within the team. This one is the leader of the team, and these are members of the team. But you said the word permission. And that's what I really want to chase after. And maybe have you share some strategies, or even just one strategy of, if I am the leader of my team.
Yeah.
And whether I know when I'm triggered, or perhaps my team members pick up on those things that are in my blind spots, but state to them, hey, Darrin's triggered right now. How do I intentionally give them that permission as members of the team to, for want of a better phrase, call me out on?
So, and what's funny with the term triggered, and how commonly that's also used at work now. Yeah. And it's interesting because the historic kind of lineage behind that word is connected to PTSD, and prior to then called shell shock, and it's just very openly used now in a lot of different places. So I think that being explicitly clear of a helpful way to notice when a leader is, we'll say, activated or something is wrong, people, and this, people don't like to be told how they're thinking, how they're feeling, how they're acting. So I'm a big fan of telling people. So I really think that letting the team know, hey, if I ever act in a way that feels confusing, or it seems like I'm bothered, or, something just feels amiss, I don't want you to think that whatever's going on for me, that it, if it has something to do with you, and it doesn't. And I want you to let me know that I'm seeming different, and just to try and be curious, to ask me, is there something going on? Is there something I need help with? Just be curious, say what you're noticing. Don't come off as like accusatory or finger pointing, because that won't go well for you. But when I notice that your behaviors are different, I, as your leader, use the same approach, and I want you to feel like it's okay to use the same approach with me. In both directions, there's no forcing of telling what's going on, but leading with curiosity and care and offering, support if it's desired, that should be able to be bidirectional.
Yeah, I love that. And it takes me to kind of my next question. So now that was how do I give my team the permission to say, hey, Darrin, I'm noticing something a little different from you. Once that happens, and now I am aware, maybe I wasn't prior. And I know you talk about this in Cornered Office. What are some strategies that I can use, that leaders can use to manage our own mental health while we are at work?
So I tend to focus on, especially, within the workplace, whether that's virtual, whether it's in person. I think that one of the best things you can do during work hours, and then I'll talk about something for outside of work hours, is focusing on two things. So communicating capacity, and also focusing on what you can control and influence. So with communicating capacity, I had heard a segment of an episode of a podcast that Brene Brown was on a number of years ago. And she was talking about this communicating capacity model that she uses with her husband. And I listened to it and I was like, why the hell are people not doing this at work? And it's you don't need a romantic relationship. This is just like how you communicate to other people what your capacity is so they know how you're showing up, and in a very concrete way. Now, obviously, there have to be exceptions to what I'm about to say, but if you are, let's say, looking at capacity from 0 to 100, 100 means I'm going on all cylinders, 0 is I'm practically comatose, don't talk to me. Being able to self-assess where you are in that range. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I can't do. These are the things that can get pushed off. This is how I'm going to explain it to people. This is why I'm going to accept where I am. Now, you have to have a shared value in the team that people will listen and honor the capacity. Again, understanding there are always exceptions. But how is your team supposed to know if you're operating at 40%? They're not thinking about your intentions and motivations. They're just reacting to your behavior. So communicating capacity and saying something like, hey guys, I'm operating at like 30% today. I am not at my best. If I don't seem like myself, please do not take it personally. If I come off like an asshole, please be gentle in how you tell me. These are the things that would be most helpful. These are the things I can take on today. If you have any questions, please let me know. It really can be that simple.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, well, the fact that you can just put a name to it, put a number to it, this is where I am. One, I think there's so much value in being able to let the team know, look, here's where I'm at. This is what I have today. Like, this is how I'm showing up. But I think for the individual, and this is kind of where I'm drawn listening to you talk, that tells me, it almost gives me permission not to underperform, not really show up, but to accept, okay, this is really where I am today. And that's okay. I don't have to be 100 every single day. Now, if I feel like I'm 100, great. But if I'm showing up and I'm feeling, hey, I'm 30 today, it's okay. That's what I'm hearing you say is I'm telling myself this is an okay thing. It's not a detriment. It's not something negative about me. It's me acknowledging here's where I am.
Yeah, and really just focusing on what are the mission critical things that need to get done and what are the things that are manufactured emergencies that can get pushed. And people love to create manufactured emergencies. Now that gets into a larger, workplace culture sort of thing. And there are some environments and some teams and some companies where the guidance I'm giving right now would never fly. And I'm not twisted about that. But there are plenty of places where it would, because I'm not saying, oh, you can't get the basics done because you're at 30%. You have a job to do. So if there is the basic stuff you got to get done, you got to get it done. But if there are other things that can and should wait, there has to be the ability to vocalize that. Because if you're forcing yourself to dig in deeper than what you're able to, that rarely goes without consequence for yourself or others. And then for circles of control and influence from Stephen Covey from Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, I love that model. I encourage people, especially leaders, to have the concentric circles like on their cell phone screensaver, their laptop. If you want to go analog, having it on paper on the wall. And then as concerns are coming up, basically writing the concern on a good old-fashioned Post-it note, putting it where you think it belongs, walking away for 5 minutes, coming back, putting it where it actually belongs, because we love to believe that we may have control or influence over something, and actually it's just something we're concerned about and can't directly influence. And being able to focus on that, and you have to do it consistently. It's like building any other muscle. If you don't, when you start focusing on things you're concerned about, which is not a healthy use of energy, as opposed to what you can control or influence, doesn't exactly do any favors for mental health or leadership style. And then when it comes to stuff they can do outside of work, there's a term that I trademarked a number of years ago. And I like talking about it, not because it's mine, but because people say it's actually helpful. So I feel that managing mental health is just as important as sleeping, eating, bathing, and breathing. Now, I'm a little biased based on what I do for a living, but that is how I feel. And if we think about the wellness industry in general, which is this huge amorphous thing, generally speaking, a lot of companies in the wellness industry care about converting humans to dollars. They don't care about personalization, execution, scientific validation. There are plenty of platforms that do. There are plenty of wellness services that are absolutely incredible, but a lot of them are crap. So if the wellness industry is telling you to do certain things for your mental well-being that you don't like doing, what are the odds that you're going to do it? So I always encourage people, you got to find at least one thing that you do for your mental health, barring cases of death, dismemberment, hell, high water, or illness, and I am not kidding, and do those things at a cadence that's realistic to achieve, and do it consistently like your life depends on it. So for example, I'm a former therapist. Meditation doesn't work for me. Yoga doesn't relax me. I see it as exercise. These are like sacrilegious things to say. So my mental well-being non-negotiables are I go salsa dancing at least 3 times a month. That's my meditation. When I had 3 surgeries on my left leg, which is basically a decorative limb now, dancing was a little hard. So my husband would put on salsa music, in our house, and I would kind of like dance around on crutches during the pandemic. Not exactly social distancing friendly. I was like, well, we have hardwood floors, salsa music, and I have a mostly willing partner and my husband that'll have to do. So you adapt. And then my other ones are I have to be in nature at least once a week. I live in Colorado, not hard to do. And I play with my dogs every single night, even though they treat me like a human jungle gym and I'm covered in bruises. So whatever it is, you want to go to a vinyl shop a couple times a month to rifle through records, fine. You want to get an inflatable velociraptor costume off of Amazon and dance to ABBA, on Saturday mornings in your living room. Do it and do whatever makes you feel good, as long as it doesn't bring harm to yourself or others.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. 2 thoughts on that. One, for me, it's the walk. It's being outside.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a daily routine, at least 30 minutes. I also live in Colorado. Very easy to do that.
Yeah.
Even though it's really smoky here right now.
I know.
Oh, It's rough. And then my
It is.
second thought is the inflatable velociraptor dancing
I
to
know.
ABBA was oddly specific. So, I mean,
Because you see all those
might be
videos on
something there.
Instagram of people like going to pick up people at the airport in like a T-Rex costume. I'm like, I wish I had the like mental capacity to follow through on something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just looks really fun, you know?
It does.
So I'm
does.
like, there's no weird answer. Do anything.
No, not at all. It makes me think this is a total like squirrel chase here. And if by chance my daughter listens to this episode, she will absolutely start roaring laughing right here.
Okay.
We had a neighbor when we lived in Nebraska. We lived in Omaha.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 kids, wonderful family, just adored them. They were our right next door neighbors. And Halloween, late afternoon, Liz is backing her car into the driveway and up to
Mhm.
the garage. And the
Mhm.
youngest of the three had an inflatable velociraptor costume.
Nuh-uh.
And he hit her car, not she hit him with the car. He ran right into the car as she would, like the
My
side
God.
of the car, just trying to be a velociraptor. And of course,
Oh my
fell.
God, I'm
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah, it was hilarious. He bounced right back up. And I sometimes I wonder if he even knew that the car was there. I don't know. But that's what it
God,
makes me think of. So sorry, real big
that's
squirrel chase
so
right there.
funny. That's
Yeah.
so specific. Like,
Yeah, I know. Well, and you took us there with the ABBA and Velociraptor. So there's one more thing I want to get to before I ask you the question that I ask everybody. Let's now go one level higher, right? So maybe I'm the CEO, maybe I am the director of human resources for a corporation, for a school district, something like that. And I'm thinking more global. I'm not, yes, I'm going to lean into what Melissa told me. I'm going to buy her book. I'm going to read all these strategies. I'm going to take care of myself.
Mhm.
But how do I go from just focusing on me to putting systems in place so we can support everybody who's a part of our organization?
Honestly, using the stuff that's already in place and directing it at leaders. Literally, I talk about this in the book where I'm like, why in God's green earth is there not a leadership peer support network using the ERG model? Why does that not exist? Why is there not explicit call outs for leadership mental health and talking about the tolls of leadership when organizations are already talking about mental health as a whole? Why is there not an explicit encouragement for leaders to use the employee assistance program, to use these resources for themselves, in addition to recommending it to their teams? All of these things are already there, but the leaders are the arbiters of the program, not the recipients. And I'm like, it's all there, guys. You just have to, you gotta include the people who are facilitating the usage of these resources and the encouragement of the resources. Like, am I alone in my principles here? And so I think especially when it comes to the peer piece, it is so critical because leaders need to talk to other leaders who have sat in the chair. You can't just ask people who have never had those sorts of experiences to completely understand. You can't ask that of them. You can try to humanize yourself to them, and I highly recommend that you are a human with limits and not just a symbol of stability. But also leaders have to be able to connect with each other, because if anybody else can understand, it's other people in the chair. So that has to be an ongoing, dedicated effort, because this is a tough narrative to break. And especially when there's a lot of leaders doing a lot of bad stuff right now. And there always will be, but especially now when global trust is at an all-time low, kind of fighting against the current.
Absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely fantastic. So leaders, hit rewind for about 3 minutes worth and just listen to that again and think about that. And a piece that I am hearing Melissa say there, in addition to everything great she just said, is don't just tell them about it. You need to model it. So those resources are there for you. You use them. If you expect others to do it, you should be doing it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fantastic stuff here, Melissa. Let's do this. We're at the point where I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody here. That's kind of my final question on the
Sure.
podcast. This is the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. So how are you leaning into leadership right now?
The way that I'm actually leaning into leadership, in addition, from my own team, is actually really showing up for other leaders, especially leaders who are self-employed, like me. I've had some really important conversations with them recently, because especially in the entrepreneurial community, leadership can be really lonely. And so the way that I'm showing up right now is by showing up for my fellow leaders. And I did a coaching session with a leader. Was it yes? I think it was yesterday. And I had said to them, just because you own this business doesn't mean you're not allowed to have needs. And they said, say it again. And I said it again. And they said, okay, now say it for yourself. I was like, okay. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm leading into leadership by showing up for my leadership community in the entrepreneurial space.
I love that. Love that so very much. As a leader in the entrepreneurial space, I got to tell you how much I appreciate that. I think that's fantastic.
I'm happy
And
to hear that.
we
Yeah.
we will at some point in time be sitting down and having a coffee together here not too far down the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't
Yeah.
take another 5 months.
Well, boy, no kidding, right? Yeah. Yeah, that is for sure. So, okay. So people are going to want to actually, before we do that, I mentioned it earlier, just really quick, share with us a little bit. Your first book is being re-released by Wiley.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
give them a little taste of,
Sure.
we've been talking Cornered
Yeah.
Office the whole time. Give them a little taste about that one.
Yes. And the full title for Cornered Office is Cornered Office: Why We Need to Talk About Leadership Mental Health, which is available across all major retailers. My first book came out in October of 2021. It's called Yes, You Can Talk About Mental Health at Work. Here's Why and How to Do It Really Well. I know it's a very vague title. You have no idea what you're going to get. It's being re-released by Wiley, kind of a second anniversary sort of edition. September 29th of 2026. It's got a brand new fancy cover and, just a bit of tightened up content. It's really meant to be still a capture in time because it was written in 2020 during the lockdown, when the pandemic was happening, when all these things were happening. So I didn't want it to not be that anymore. I wanted it to still be what it always was, but looking back on it and just being able to tighten it up a little bit and make sure it's even clear for people to use. And the first book is really, here's this topic we all tend to misunderstand and have very deeply personal experiences with. And let's make sure we're all on the same page about what mental health is, what it's not, and also the purpose of talking about it in the workplace, what it is supposed to be, what it's not supposed to be in that conversation, what are the boundaries around that, how global systemic racism, also being impacted, for that conversation for certain affected communities, how the pandemic impacted that conversation, heightened levels of global systemic stress, and just really saying, this conversation needs to evolve based on the systems in which those conversations exist. And so going back and reading it now, and I was like, oh, thank God my writing's improved. But also just seeing that capture in time was really special, and being able to make sure that, it's as tight as ever, being re-released this year, 5 years later. And, having Cornered Office come out the same year that the first book is also being re-released is really special. So that's also available right now for pre-order across all major retailers and will be available for purchase September 29th.
That's outstanding. And I know folks are going to want to check that out. So
I hope so.
how did they get in touch with you? How did they lean in and learn more from Melissa Doman?
So if you want me to come into your organization and talk about mental health, communication, team dynamics, and, use an occasional curse word here and there, I'd love to hear from you. My website is melissadoman.com. Reach out anytime. I also do, leadership coaching and team building offsites, fireside interviews, workshops, consulting. And you're welcome to connect on LinkedIn as well, which is my name, Melissa Doman. And then on Instagram, it's @TheWanderingMel.
There we go. We'll make sure all of that stuff is in the show notes. Now,
Awesome.
a bonus question. Have we earned a little Chewbacca?
God.
You thought I was going to forget.
Sure.
No way.
Sure. Are we also posting the video of this?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, God.
Yes. Do you have a
don't
costume you
even
need
know
to get
how...
into? I mean,
No, I get self-conscious about how my face looks when I do it, but I'm just going to close my eyes. So I don't.
There you go. Yeah. And we'll
it.
ask everybody who's watching on YouTube, close your eyes while she does this.
No.
Okay, we'll make that. Yeah.
Oh my God, no. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get a sip of water here. I don't know why I do this to myself. Okay.
That is fantastic. That is
It's not the
definitely
best in
the
world,
first
but it's
Chewbacca
pretty decent.
impersonation here on the show. So fantastic stuff.
I will take that title.
Yeah. Yeah, that is wonderful. All right, man, this has been so much fun. Melissa, thanks for joining me here on the podcast.
I had so much fun.
My friends, such a great conversation with Melissa. I don't know if I've laughed that much during a podcast interview in the 295 episode history of this show, but man, that was just absolutely a blast. Make sure you check out all of Melissa's work. Go down and hit the show notes link. She's got a brand new book that is out, and she has the re-release of her other book coming later this week. So hit those things down in the show notes. And now it's time for a pep talk. So I think this ties in really well with this episode with Melissa, but I want to talk about something that I did yesterday. Instead of being in the office, instead of working, honestly, I moved a whole bunch of my meetings, changed around my schedule. my wife, my daughter, and I loaded up in the Jeep and we went to the mountains. Typically, not something I'm going to do during the course of the week, but sometimes we just need that release. In this episode, we talked about that leaders eat last, and Melissa talked about really challenging that. Not that it's wrong, but that at times leaders still need to make sure that we're fueling ourselves. And for me, that's what yesterday represented. It was an opportunity for me to step away. It was an opportunity for me to make sure that as I head into a very heavy travel schedule over the next few months, I'm going to have in the tank what I need in order to really pour into those leaders that I get to support. I found it refreshing. I found it eye-opening, and yet at the same time, anytime I do something like this, there's definitely a leadership connection. And it made me think a lot about the leaders that I hear talk about, this younger generation that are working in our schools, working in our offices, working in our corporations, and how they see X number of days that they're allowed to take off every year, and typically they take them. And I even had a leader say recently to me that this next generation, this most recent generation that is now coming into these roles, is not as dedicated. And I don't agree with that at all. I think this generation understands far better than any preceding generation that if we don't take the time for ourselves, if we don't take the time to really take care of ourselves, there's not going to be much of us left further down the road. So if you have some of those folks on your team, on your staff, in your organization, and I'm certain that you do, and you're thinking some of those same things, like why are they taking their personal time off? Why are they taking their sick days or whatever it is that your organization offers to them? Take a step back. Don't necessarily judge. Be curious, not judgmental, and realize that more than likely, there may be a step ahead of the rest of us in terms of saying, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to do the right things for my physical and mental well-being so that I can be the best person I can be here when I am here. Just some food for thought, something for you to think about. I will tell you, for me, I am a whole lot sharper and a whole lot more well-refreshed by taking that day yesterday, and might be something I do again, not too far down the road. Hey, that's what I've got for you this week, folks. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Leaning Into Leadership podcast. As always, rate, review, subscribe, get out there, have a road to awesome week.